Hello. Sweet.
Yeah.
Hello. Cool. One more person, and then we are ready to rock and roll. Hey, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. If you guys can put in the chat where you are dialing in from, and let's kind of get the vibe going here right now and get everyone excited about this session. Awesome. Houston, Montreal, Rhode Island, North Carolina, California. Very, very cool. We will start in a couple of minutes. We just want to make sure everyone has time to log in. Yeah, definitely. If you guys want to drop your LinkedIn profile or link, go ahead and do so in the chat. Give it a couple more minutes. Okay, we'll give it one more minute and then we'll get started. All right, we will get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to URX last talent development program session of the summer. To give you a little bit of context of what URX is a group of early talent professionals, recruiters, and career service folks who gather together and share best practices. Due to COVID-19, the URX community saw firsthand the difficult decisions of employers canceling their internship programs. URX wanted to provide students with an opportunity to gain professional development knowledge and skills over the summer. So over the last couple of weeks, we have a series of customized workshops hosted by different employers. And these workshops really will help students in their professional development to prepare for the fall recruitment season. I am Kathleen, and I manage the Early Talent Program for North America Cloudera, and I'm also part of the URX community. Today, I am going to introduce our panelists, and we're going to have some Q&A as well. I'll do an introduction. I have a list of questions to ask our panelists, and then everyone in the chat, if you guys have questions as well, please go ahead and ask in the chat, and we'll dedicate the last 15 to 20 minutes to Q&A. All right. We are going to get started with some introductions. First up, we have Cynthia Yin, who is currently residing in the Bay Area. She graduated from Stanford, class of 2018. She works at Cloudera. Cloudera is an enterprise data company that helps businesses stream, analyze, and process big data. She's a back-end software engineer on the Cloudera Manager team, which is our application for customers to manage clusters of data. A fun fact about her is she picked up golfing, recently picked it back up as a hobby during quarantine. Welcome, Cynthia. Next up, we have Charvel Parikh, who is currently residing in Clarksburg, Maryland. He graduated from the University of Maryland College Park in 2019. He works at Nextdoor. Nextdoor is a neighborhood hub for trusted connections and the exchange of helpful information, goods, and services. They believe that by bringing neighbors together, they can cultivate a kinder world where everyone has a neighborhood they can rely on. He works on the local hub team, and they're in charge of building the infrastructure for local businesses to have a presence in their platform. Fun fact about him, he currently has an oil painting hanging in his parents' home of him holding a taco that he won from Taco Bell in a Twitter contest. Pretty interesting fact. Welcome, Charvel. Next up is Sushant Kunmuri, who is currently residing in San Francisco. He graduated from Berkeley this year, 2020. He works at Databricks. Databricks is a platform that democratizes big data by enabling data scientists and data engineers in any organization to seamlessly work and collaborate on leveraging the full potential of ML and AI. He's a software engineer on the service infrastructure team, and they're responsible for the development and maintenance of multiple distributed services for both internal engineers and their clients. Fun fact about him, at his internship, while he was waiting for one of his processes to run, he learned how to juggle. Pretty cool. And last but not least is Amy Luo from upstate New York, and she'll actually be moving to NYC later this year. She graduated from Northeastern University, May 2020. She is a front-end engineer on the dashboards team at Datadog. Datadog is a SaaS platform for infrastructure monitoring. She works on the experience of interacting with dashboards and how users visualize data. Fun fact about her is she has a lot of pets, currently living with a dog, a bunny, a chinchilla, and a very old hamster. Well, welcome everyone on the panel. We are going to get started right away. So we are going to take it back, some of you 2018, some of you who just graduated recently, and talk about your education. Kicking it off with Sushant, what are some relevant classes that you took back in school that have helped you in your career?
Yeah, firstly, thanks for having me, everyone. Yeah, so like, a lot of people, think that algorithms and data structures are really helpful, and they are really helpful, right? But I think one of the more underappreciated classes that I took was internet and its architecture. And, there's a lot of things that go into software engineering, and of course, like building really, really fast algorithms is one of them. But at the same time, as a software engineer, you also have the responsibility of building systems that are scalable and modular, right? Your system needs to be ready to be able to integrate with anything that may or may not be developed in the future. And the internet is the biggest distributed system there is. And learning about the design decisions that went into what built the internet, and brainstorming what's wrong with the internet today and how we can improve it in the future if we did have a chance to build it again, rebuild it. That was a really insightful and interesting class that I took, and I think it really did help me hone my skills as a software engineer in terms of design, not UI UX design, but design in terms of building systems that are modular and scalable.
I'm gonna follow up with, looking back now, are there any classes you wish you would have taken now that you are, fully embedded into your job?
I really wish I'd taken more ML classes because that's the up and coming thing. I only did take one ML class, although Berkeley did offer more classes at the graduate level. I personally felt like I was drawn more towards systems, which is totally fair for me. But given Databricks' emphasis on AI and ML, which is really interesting, I really did wish that I took more of those classes to be able to understand what other teams are doing here at Databricks.
Does anyone like to add on any specific classes that they felt are relevant or wish they would have taken now looking back? No? Okay. Moving on to clubs and organizations. Cynthia, what clubs and organizations were you part of, and did you find it valuable to participate?
Yeah, so for me, I was mostly a part of SWE, the Society of Women Engineers, when I was at Stanford for the majority of my time there. And I would highly recommend, joining an organization where, so for me, what I found valuable was even though I was a CS major, I was able to, meet people and make friends who were in other engineering majors. So that's what I found to be the value of joining an organization beyond, obviously events and activities and leadership opportunities, just meeting people from different backgrounds with different interests to understand what else there is in engineering, and even, people, other CS majors who were interested in different career paths beyond just like software engineering. I think just having that variety and perspective was very helpful for me as I was trying to figure out my career and what I wanted to do with my education.
And building off of that, joining an organization is going to help you network better. And I think that's even more prevalent today where we are in a virtual environment where you are going to have to network in LinkedIn, network within your student organizations that you are part of. So please join a student organization if you can. I know a lot of recruiters love to work closely with student organizations on that level, and it's more of a personal level. So join as much as you can, network, and take advantage of the different companies that come to those student organizations to kind of host a tech talk or host a lunch. You're going to find it better to connect with recruiters that way. And moving to internships. For those of you that intern, can you talk about your time as an intern? What surprised you the most? I'm gonna start off with Amy.
So I did internships at my time in college, just because our school does like a co-op program where you work for 6 months in between classes. What I found surprising was like quite the contrast. I actually interned at Datadog like the year before I joined full time. What I really appreciated was like being at a company where like software engineering was the focus, because previously I had worked at like a small startup, and just the difference between like working at like a biotech company where like the website was kind of like a side facet versus like the focus that it was given at like a software engineering focused company. Yeah, and just like the diversity of people and like meeting people on different teams, it was really great.
So, Charvel?
Like you mentioned, I had the chance to intern twice before joining full-time to Nextdoor. So it's really a unique opportunity to see Nextdoor almost double in size between my internships and joining full-time while still embodying the same culture. What surprised me the most was the ownership I had during my internship. With the ownership came freedom in not only the work I did, but it also allowed me to mold the intern experience around how I wanted to grow. I had the opportunity to meet with our leadership team throughout the summer, where they went through their story and opened up to a Q&A. It was really humbling to see that many of them face the same challenges that we did as students. And lastly, being able to own my intern project came with a lot of responsibilities, since I had to juggle a lot of decisions around the fact that I was only there for 12 weeks. Nonetheless, it showed that the company trusted me to take on meaningful work and that they were still invested in my success. Both my intern projects are still up and running today, and it's really cool to be able to use them as a full-time engineer.
Pretty cool. Sushant? Oh, I think you are.
I had the privilege of interning at Databricks before joining full-time, and my response is like going to be very similar to like Charvel's. The project that I was going to be working on was scoped out like months before I got there, and they also like made it a point to leave certain parts of it like open-ended, so I could like figure it out for myself, and like maybe like have design design like meetings with like the engineers in our team to come up with new ideas on how we could like build a certain like feature for the service that I was building. And I spent the entirety of the 12 weeks like working on the project. And what I found most surprising was the impact that my project had. Just like Charvel's, my project like is something that's still being used today. Like, I came back full time, and some of the first emails that I saw were from my service. So that was really satisfying to see. And I was genuinely surprised to see that like Databricks trusted me enough to build like such a high impact project for them in the 12 weeks that I was there.
And how has the transition been from intern to full-time? Especially, I know some of you who got a return offer, and now you are kind of, the architecture of each of your companies, and you're going back almost 6 months to a year later. How was the transition?
I'll go ahead.
Okay.
A really seamless transition from being an intern to a full-time engineer. During the time after my internship, I kept in touch with my manager, who gave me updates on how the team was doing, what a roadmap was looking like. And starting remote was definitely not as fun as being in person, going to all those onboarding meetings with all my friends. But I quickly adjusted to video calls and treating Slack like my best friend. One of the things I found most challenging during my first couple of weeks was trying to remember all the small things I picked up during my internship. There were countless times where I knew the answer to a question since I dealt with it before, but the answer was lodged like right outside of my brain where I couldn't reach it. But I can say as the weeks progressed, things got easier and easier, and I got more accustomed to work, and things started coming back to me.
Sorry.
I was gonna call it.
I feel like I had a similar experience. It was definitely nice, like going back to the same team and company, since I like knew everyone in the team and was kind of familiar with the work already. So starting remote wasn't as challenging as someone who like had just started. Yeah, so there was definitely like a transition period of like a month or so, I'd say. But there were some really useful like onboarding docs and documentation that helped me along.
Yeah, I would also, so interestingly enough, like my senior year of college, I did not take any CS classes. I'd finished all my CS requirements beforehand. And, I tried exploring like different things. So coming into like Databricks full time, I will admit that I was pretty afraid that I wouldn't remember anything about when I started. It wasn't the case to come back like pretty easily. But at the same time, like the stuff that I worked on as an intern were kind of like restricted to like one component of, the different services that my team works on. So being able to like, kind of like get exposed to like other services, like my team, like kind of like created some onboarding tasks for me to kind of like get exposed to the different services that they worked on. And, I found those really helpful. And I'm still in the process of transitioning into like being a full-time now, actually, because I just started like 4 weeks ago. But yeah, it's been pretty seamless for me. Of course, like the others mentioned, working remotely has been really, really hard. It's not so nice to like not see like your colleagues next to you who you can kind of like bug with questions. You have to Slack them, and sometimes they don't see it immediately. That's certainly a challenge. But I guess, it is what it is, and it's something that we all have to get used to given like the current climate.
I know this isn't a question that some of you didn't put your name next to, but that's okay. I think mentorship is very important to helping grow your career. So in your internship, were you guys provided a mentor? And then outside of that, did you guys have a mentor? Or do you have a mentor now?
I can touch on this. So I didn't intern at Cloudera, but I can kind of speak about mentorship now as a full-time. So I wouldn't say that I necessarily have someone who is like an official mentor, but I consider a lot of people to be people who I speak to for advice or people I look up to. And something that a more senior engineer recently told me in the context of kind of like a mentorship frame. And again, it wasn't, like, oh, you're officially my mentor. It was more just like, hey, I'm interested in what your career path is, and I think that's often how the best, mentorship opportunities come about is, just finding people that you connect with or are interested in learning more about. rather than, really forcing a relationship, where you may not have similar interests and so on. So what this person told me, just a piece of advice, was to have people to look up to that have different, kind of like different styles of how they approach software engineering, in terms of, so the example that they told me was kind of, someone who is very detail oriented and is very, pays attention to kind of like the low level, like nitty gritty things about our work. But then also having someone who I can look up to that is very good at the big picture and overall architecture. So they were really emphasizing the importance of that to kind of get those two sides. And, maybe you can find someone that has both of those qualities. But for me, I find that in two different people on my team. And so I think especially as a female engineer on my team, I think it's often hard to see people that, that look like you. So also finding that and, finding your allies and who they are, that was kind of their advice.
Anyone else? Did you have a mentor as an intern, or do you have a mentor now?
I can answer that. I did have a mentor as an intern who guided me through the entire process and helped me with my project whenever I was roadblocked with anything, and also kind of like explain the different like architectural items about the company that I needed to know for the scope of my project. I do have a mentor now as well who is helping me through onboarding. And, I think it's really helpful to have those things. Like I couldn't imagine what I would be doing without any of them. And if I just had to do all of it by myself. So it's really helpful to have mentors who kind of guide you through the entire process. And the biggest advice I've gotten, I think I only got it a week ago, was just be proactive on your team, right? Because your team certainly will give you tasks to do, and sometimes you'll probably end up doing it much sooner than you would have expected. But I don't he mentioned that you shouldn't stop there, right? Once you're done with that, maybe take on tasks that are in the backlog that your team intended to do a long time ago but didn't get around to. This would give you a chance not only to play around with other people's codes, but also learn more about the team. And this doesn't he didn't necessarily say that you have to finish these backlog tasks, if you get the chance, but maybe just looking through them, kind of getting an idea on how you would solve the problem would be very beneficial, because now you're just exposed to an entirely new component of the team that could help you in the future in case you work on something similar. So yeah, just be proactive in terms of what you do on your team. Don't ever settle, but at the same time, don't burn yourself out. I think it's very important, especially during these times, when you're working remotely, you don't have a scale against which you measure the amount you work, at home. So certainly don't feel too pressured to run multiple extra miles. Certainly run the extra mile when you get the chance. But yeah, don't burn yourself out, because that is a real thing.
Yeah, just going off of both what Cynthia and Sushan said, mentorship is really important, and it doesn't have to be I'm choosing you to be my mentor. It's really a natural process. I consider my manager a mentor. I consider someone that I work closely with on a project a mentor. I like to have mentors in different areas that I know that I need some improvement in. So whether it's public speaking skills or someone that's really good at public speaking, I know that I can go to one person about that. Or if it has to be something data related, I know who to go to for that. So it's really just, it's a natural process. Any of my coworkers I consider mentors, because they've really helped guide me with just anything that I've done at Cloudera so far. So please look into it if you guys can. And whether it's like I said, I consider my manager a mentor, and that's just something natural that happened because we have weekly one-on-ones, and she's giving me feedback and I'm giving her feedback. And so that naturally developed into a mentorship relationship. So things like that, I think is very important. And now moving on to choosing an organization to work for. So whether it was when you were interning or looking for an internship, or now looking for a full-time job, kicking it off with Cynthia, what is most important for you in choosing a company to work for?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so for me, I think what I've learned, so I guess I've been working full time for about 2 years now. So I think what I've learned from my experience working full time is really what I find important is really the people who I work with, and kind of like the culture, because you're in this environment for, a very big portion of your week, of the day. So, if you're not enjoying, I guess the first thing for me is, what I work on, but then after that, it's really the people that I work with. And I've been very fortunate to work on a team where I really like the people that I work with, and I really like Cloudera's culture. So for me, when I was doing my interviews with Cloudera for full time, I had a really good interview experience in the sense that everyone I spoke to kind of showed this culture where we are very like collaborative, open. People are extremely nice, and I think that was really what made it very easy for me to sign my offer letter, in the sense that I didn't have a hesitation that I would be in a great environment. So yeah, I think, it's very hard, I think, to really know that without, especially if you're going into like an intern or new grad role. Oftentimes you don't really know, what team you'll be on when you get an offer. But once you know your team, I think it's always good to at least reach out, get on a phone call with them. If not, like a video call. And it's like, obviously after COVID, if you can visit, I think that's great as well. But just getting a sense of who you are going to work with, I think it is very valuable.
And then kind of building off that, Sushant and Charville, why did you choose to join your companies? We can start with Charville.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo what Cynthia says, like being in a work environment with these people every single day. I think choosing your first job out of college is such an important choice. It sets the benchmark for what you'll expect out of a job for the coming years. And there are so many factors to consider, such as the work you'll be doing, people you'll be working with, and what you're expecting to get out of it. I think for me, the easiest way to check off all those boxes was to find a company whose mission I really aligned with. There, I was able to find meaningful work and coworkers who share that same passion and vision for the company. And it also personally helped me answer that like existential question of, why am I doing this? And so for me, Nextdoor was that mission-driven company whose people and initiatives aligned with what I was looking for. And working here has felt like being on a really big team with everyone working towards the same goal.
Yeah, and for me personally, I prioritize two like things when choosing an organization. The first one is like the trust that the company places in you. When like your employer, when your company like trusts you a lot, they give you like high impact projects, like we talked, like some of us talked about previously, and that's what like really opens up like opportunities for you to grow, not only as a software developer, but any other role, like whatever you like may be doing in that company. So I think like that's very important. And as an intern at Databricks, I really saw that, and I was like confident that I would continue to like work on like high impact projects like as a full timer as well. In fact, like I've just started like 4 weeks ago, and I already get like my onboarding tasks themselves are tasks that customers have been asking for. They're not major, but it's still something. Like the fact that like a customer asked for something and they're giving that to me as an onboarding task, is really cool, and I really appreciate that. And that's something that I was looking for. Unfortunately, I did find the Databricks. And the second thing that I always look for is transparency. When I was an intern, I spent a lot of time like talking to multiple other teams, what they were working on, not just within engineering, but also within like sales, marketing, finance, to just learn or develop like a more holistic sense of what the company or what the direction the company was heading in. And everyone was really welcoming. In fact, like, when I talked to like someone from sales, they told me that I could sit in on a couple of sales calls with potential clients. So yeah, I did that, and that was just like an entirely like different like perspective from what like you would gain like as an engineer. So transparency is also something that I really prioritize, and once again, did find that at Databricks. So really grateful for that.
I appreciate that you guys, said something along the lines of experience, trust. I know money is a nice to have, right? Of course, you want to go to a company that's paying you pretty well. But I think at the end of it all, it's also, will you be working on projects that you feel will make an impact within the community? Can you truly say that if we look at your resume, are you going to say that like at this company, I built this and now it's live? So I think those are just key factors to look at, and looking at a company. It's not always about money, but it's about the experience that you're going to gain. It's going to help you in your future career. So thank you for that. Sushant, going back to you, what has been your biggest success and biggest learning opportunity?
The biggest success and biggest learning opportunity both in one is easily like my intern project. The success was that like I got to like deploy it and like watch all these different engineers use it before I left. And, I'm still like seeing them use it. So it clearly wasn't something that people used for like a short amount of time and threw away. But that also turned out to be like a big learning opportunity because, like the feature that I built turned out to be like a security feature, which kind of like maximized security, but at the same time made certain processes slightly inconvenient because you kind of like had to like log in maybe like twice to get into something, kind of like two-factor auth. It's really helpful, but at the same time, I'm sure like a lot of us like find it like really inconvenient. So when I did deploy my feature, it did receive a lot of feedback in that like a lot of engineers were not too welcoming of it. They felt like it could have been designed like slightly better, which made like the processes more convenient. So like before I left, like sitting down with them, like, I made it a point to like sit down with everyone who gave me feedback or who just messaged me about it. And get like more direct feedback from them and like kind of like compile that into like a Google Doc, and maybe like suggest and just scoped out like other features that my team could build once I left, that would help make this like process or the service more convenient for like engineers to use. And in fact, like my team did end up using a couple of those ideas, so that was also like really satisfying to know. But yeah. Easily like the biggest success I've had at Databricks in my short time there, and the biggest learning opportunity at the same time.
Great, Sushant. Amy, going back to you, how did you make the most out of your first 3 months? What's advice that you would give someone just starting out in their career or their full-time career?
Yeah. So when I joined in June, I found myself just like joining a really big project that my team had been working on since the beginning of the year. So there was a lot of like understanding and reading like other people's code and like kind of like understanding the scope of the project. And I think some like really good advice that I got that I would like to pass on is that even if you're just starting out, like don't be afraid to not only like ask questions, but also like question why or like how things are built the way they are. Like I feel like it's like I found myself kind of shy, like being like a new grad, like just jumping in the project, like always assuming that things were written or built a certain way, but like that's not necessarily the case. And also just to be vocal about like what you want to do, like what you want to work on, and like also what skills in what areas you want to specialize in.
I like that, asking questions. I think that's super important. You don't know what you know, right? So no one's going to knock you down for that, and no question is stupid. So when you are starting off as an intern or starting at a full-time job, I would say exactly that. Ask as many questions as you can, and of course, meet with as many people as you can so that you know who to go to for certain things, and network within your company. You never know when you're going to rely on someone. You want to build those relationships up. And when you build those relationships up, more likely than not, people are going to say yes to some of the things that you are asking for. So I know we touched a little bit, but maybe we can talk a little bit more. What would you say is the biggest difference between being an intern and being full-time at a company? Cynthia or Sushant, whoever wants to start.
Yeah, so for me, I think this kind of also goes along with, just kind of being a student versus, working. So in my experience, classes and internships as well are pretty well defined for you in terms of, there's a set timeline, a set scope, and you have a lot of kind of structure to what you're doing. So for me, I think, the biggest difference transitioning to full-time was kind of losing that structure and, really having to figure things out along the way with, without really a well-defined, end goal. And obviously there are, you can kind of find those like smaller, like milestones along the way in terms of like, smaller projects and smaller, things that you're doing. But I think just kind of losing that structure. And I think it's, in a way, I actually really like that, because I think as I have been able to, become more familiar with my project and my team, I've been able to explore a lot more rather than in a structured, in a structured environment. So I think there, you can view it in a positive way. And I also kind of see that on the other side in terms of, watching interns and new grads kind of come into the company. I often see that they like their mindset is very like, this is, I often see people kind of treat their work as, oh, this is like a school project, very well defined. And they are often not yet at the point where they're thinking about, thinking out of the box, thinking, those interesting questions that, you kind of learn along the way how to kind of move into that mindset.
Yeah, like for me, it was basically what everything like Cynthia said. But just to put it like maybe more directly for me personally, I think it's like really different because like as an intern, you have like a very narrow focus on like the project that you're assigned that's already been like mostly designed for you. Just like Cynthia said, like you have some structure when you're an intern because the structure was already defined for you. But then like coming in full time, you're part of the team. You need to like be part of the defining structure. You need to be part of the team that defines the structure. And yeah, like just like yesterday, I was part of like our Q4 like quarter, like the fourth quarter like planning session where we like where the entire team sat down together, like what we were going to focus on. So being part of those discussions weren't really like that prevalent as an intern because once again, I just had the one project that I had to do that was assigned to me. But now, I'm part of the team and I'm a member that's gonna help like decide like the direction it's gonna head in. So the responsibilities are a lot more like broad, just like Cynthia mentioned once again, and you help define the structure. So it's really different. And one more thing I want to mention is that like as an intern, you probably just like develop some really cool feature and you leave. But as a full timer, you're not only like develop features that are really cool, but at the same time, you also got to maintain legacy features that were built by other people and make sure that you put out any fires that come up, while you're working there. So that's a huge difference that I've seen between like being a full timer and an intern.
All right, we have a couple more questions, and I know we have some from the audience too that we'd love to answer. Reflecting back and looking to the future. So Cynthia, do you remember a specific experience where you wish you had done something differently? If you were to do it over, what would you change?
Yeah, this kind of actually goes back to earlier what Amy and Kathleen mentioned. So for me, I think when I was starting, I was very much, again, kind of also goes into like the student mindset where I was actually very like afraid to ask questions and kind of like afraid of like bothering people. And, obviously people are there for you and, you need to all work together as a team. But for me, I was very like intimidated. And so my onboarding experience was not like the smoothest that it could have been. So I definitely would have gone back and kind of just been more confident about, figuring things out, asking questions, reaching out to people for help, and kind of, obviously, as a new grad, you're not expected to know everything going in. And it's expected that there is a learning curve and that, you will need help from other people. So I think just really trying to be more collaborative instead of, I was very much like, oh, let me work on this and see how far I can get. But that often sent me down on the wrong path for a long time, which is, I guess, like a waste of time. So, just kind of checking in with people, being communicative, especially in the era of COVID. I think that's even more important where you're not able to meet with people in person and have like face-to-face meetings. I think that's what I would say to myself going back.
Awesome. Amy, what are you doing now to ensure you continue to grow and develop in your career?
Yeah, so I think like now one of my main goals is just like reaching outwards I feel like during my internship and like the first couple of months that I've been working, I've been really focused on like doing a good job at like what I'm currently working on. But moving forwards, I'm trying to like talk to more people from like different teams, get like a more higher level of like what my company is doing. Yeah, and just having like a greater understanding so I can make more decisions.
Charvel? Oh, are you?
You're muted.
You're on mute. Oh no.
There's a lot when you work remotely.
We got you. Oh, you're still muted. Try now. We had you earlier, and then you kind of dropped out.
Okay. Like you can hear us.
Okay, so move on to the next question. So this is our last question. What is one piece of advice you would give to these students as they go back to school, knowing that, one, we are in a remote environment, networking isn't as easy or in person, it's now virtual. Just thinking about COVID, pretty much, taking that into account, what is one advice you guys would give? I think everyone can give some sort of advice, but anyone would like to start?
I can go.
Sure,
sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. Thanks. So I think for me, and this is advice that I would give even outside of COVID, but I think is especially true in COVID. And I think it may be different from what other people say, but I think really just don't be very hard on yourself. I think it's often very easy to worry about your future, about your career, about, am I doing the right thing? Is this the right path for me? I see my friends doing this. Should I be doing this as well? So, obviously work hard and, keep, trucking along. But I think it's, also make sure that you take care of yourself, especially in the time of COVID when things are very stressful and things are often much more challenging now. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think like what Cynthia said, is very important. Like the grass is always going to be greener on the other side, especially when you see like your friends getting like really cool like internships and like full-time jobs. But I think at the end of the day, like it's very important to sit down and like prioritize like, what you want most out of like a job or an internship. Kind of like decide like the kind of like values and like culture that you want to be part of. And it's important to do that research before like applying to a company, and even like while talking or interviewing with a company, because you're going to have like multiple opportunities to talk to recruiters and engineers while you're interviewing with them, and even like after you probably like get your like offer. So like certainly like do all that research and like decide for yourself what you think will be the best fit for you. And if you can do that, then I think the grass will probably look pretty green on your side too. But at the same time, like one other advice that I'd want to give is like maintain discipline when it comes to like applying to all these like internships and full-time positions, because there's so many out there. I remember like my experiences being like my first experience, which was the first time I ever applied to like internships, was like all over the place because I just applied to like multiple different places, and I didn't have like a structure in terms of like how I managed my time and like with all the interviews that I had in all my classes. And it got out of hand at one point before like, I had to take a step back and like tell myself that, there's a better way of doing this. So yeah, learning from that, like, I think it's very important to kind of like maintain some discipline in terms of like the structure you like set for yourself to maintain or to manage your time with all the different things that you have in your hand, because this time is not easy for everyone. especially with COVID, like you have your classes, you probably are part of like some really cool organizations on campus, want to be doing other things, like maybe taking care of your family. So it's very important to like, define that before you start the entire process.
Amy or Charville, do you guys have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think similarly, like when you are interviewing with companies, it's important to remember that like you're interviewing them as much as they are interviewing you. I think like finding a good fit is really important, not necessarily just like the biggest name or like the highest salary,
Oh, we still can't hear you. Okay, he'll probably log back in. Okay, so we have a few questions. I'm going to start with Kevin. Can any recruiters speak to when internships will be posted? I can speak on behalf of Cloudera when I say that they will be posted actually within the next week or two. Of course, I do want to let you all know, please be patient with a lot of the companies. They are currently trying to figure out headcount and navigating, just as much as you guys are navigating, a lot of other companies are navigating through the pandemic as well. But I know that Alexa from Databricks said that they're opening their internship and new grad roles in 2 weeks. And Jessica said that Nextdoor will be opening internship applications in September, so keep an eye on their career page. I don't know when Datadog is posting, so hopefully soon along those lines as well. Let's see. We had another question up here from Ayush. How do you know if your internship is going in the right direction? So that, I guess, goes for any of you, if anyone would like to answer that question.
Must try. There we go. Great. Okay. So I think one really important thing to set up at the beginning of your internship is to have weekly one-on-ones with your mentor or manager. Like you should never be surprised going into like a meeting with your manager or mentor being like, hey, why am I getting the feedback that I got? Like you should be up to date with them throughout the whole summer of like, hey, I need to hit these checkpoints. If you're not trending towards those checkpoints, what can you do differently by the next meeting? And just keep setting those milestones along the way. So you're never like caught off guard when your mentor is like, hey, like, why didn't you finish that one thing you did? Like you should always be in like constant communication. So you'll like have a good general idea of how you're trending throughout your time at their internship.
At our company, we have set check-ins and that we really hold our managers accountable. And I think that should go for everyone, whether you're an intern or in your full-time position. Really, not only hold yourself accountable, but hold your manager accountable to really help you set achievable goals, whether it's short-term or long-term. You are at that job for a reason and you want to grow within the company and taking on challenging projects, but you also want to see your progress. So exactly what Charville said, really champion for yourself to do well. And if your manager is not pushing for you to do well, obviously find someone on your team that is going to champion for you to do well and help you set up for success. But you want to look out for yourself first and really set up those expectations for yourself. And that's when you're going to figure out if the people in your career, in your company are helping you along the way. And that's when you know if you'll be successful. Okay. What are some common mistakes you noticed new grads, interns often make?
I can speak to like a mistake that I personally made as an intern. Like I mentioned before, I was very, very focused on my project to the extent almost that like I didn't care too much about what the rest of the team was doing. Like, sure, like, we had like daily stand-up meetings to kind of like update on like what update each other on like what everyone else was doing. But like, there were some bigger meetings like, weekly reviews and other like technical terms that I won't mention now. But basically like, there was a ton of stuff that was going on around me with other like components of like what my team was dealing with. And I did not pay too much attention to those. And I really wish I could go back in time and undo that and actually like have paid more attention. Because, if you really want to get a good sense of what like your full-time job would be like as an intern, I don't think your intern project slash experience by itself is like a good is an enough of an indicator. I think it's also like gauging like what the rest of the team does on a daily basis that will really, like, really help you like understand what your experience is going to be like if and when you join like full time. So always, you know, try and like interact with like the rest of your team, try and like learn more about like what they're working on. If you don't understand something, just like, you know, hit them up, like schedule a one-on-one, like talk to them for however long, and try and really understand like what the rest of the team is doing.
Yeah, I think obviously it's dependent on everyone's personality. Going to a new job, you don't know if you're should speak up. You don't know the right words to say. It's just very new navigating through that. But I don't call them as mistakes. I think it's just more of please speak up if you find something going wrong with your internship or your first couple months at your new career. Please ask the right questions. Please don't be afraid to ask questions. I think I had an intern who, you know, I only check up so often. You know, I do a midpoint check-in, a final check-in, but I didn't know till midpoint check-in that my intern wasn't given a very a good project. And so it wasn't until that midpoint where I had to rectify the situation, but I could have done that earlier on. Even through my check-ins, this person wasn't speaking up, and I understand it's a scary situation sometimes to kind of say, hey, my manager isn't providing me with the best opportunity. So can you please help me with that? So at that 6-week mark, I had to now scramble and get check-ins with the manager and say, what is going on? Why are we not providing the best experience for this intern? And so things like that, if you just speak up and just feel like something is not going the way you think it should, go to your recruiter, go to your HR person, go to someone, go to your champion, your ally, and really speak up and just say, hey, I don't think things are going well right now, and I don't know what to do. What's the best advice that you can give me? And then I'm pretty sure there's, you know, one manager may be so busy and may not be able to help you, but the people on the team can. And so really take advantage of that. Cool. What other? So Ayush kind of said, thanks, Charvel. One last thing, if you feel that your manager is not that interested, you push for the meetings yourself. So we kind of touched a little bit upon that. Do you want to add anything to that, Charvel?
Yeah, I just responded to the chat as well, but exactly what you said, like feel free to reach out to other people that you've been working with during your internship. They don't have to be your direct manager or your mentor, like people you've asked questions to. Let them know like, hey, I'm working on this thing and these are the accomplishments I've had so far. And at Nextdoor, I personally had the opportunity to bring people outside my mentor and manager to submit feedback for me at the end of my internship. And they've been people who like may not be even on my team, but they've championed for me at the end of my internship, which has helped me a lot.
Yeah, I kind of also want to touch on that because this actually kind of is related to what I mentioned earlier about kind of like my onboarding experience not being that great. And the reason for that was because the person who was assigned to be my mentor was not, you know, they're obviously very great technically and great in many other ways, but they were not very good at being my mentor in certain aspects. And I thought that it was actually something with me where I like, you know, I couldn't communicate well with them, or it was like I needed to work more on my own to figure something out before talking to them. And actually over time, I realized that other people who were asking them for help from outside my team were actually having the same experience. And I wish that I had been able to kind of just speak up more to my manager to figure out what was going on and, you know, how I could fix the situation. And as Kathleen mentioned, you know, it's a very kind of sometimes a very scary position because you don't want to, you know, these people are more experienced than you, have been at the company longer, and you don't want to, you know, obviously offend them. But at the same time, like, you know, everyone is a team and everyone should be there for each other. So kind of just figuring out what works best for everyone and fixing the situation sooner rather than later is always the best.
Someone asked, if your internship got canceled due to COVID, should you indicate that on your resume? The resumes that I've seen so far, actually quite a few people have indicated that their internship was canceled. So if you'd like to do that, I think that gives recruiters a little bit of knowledge of like what has happened this summer. So feel free to do so. Again, my recruiting style is totally different from everyone else, but it would be good to know if your internship did get canceled. And if there was things that you were able to accomplish this summer, whether it's a project you built, whether you attended any of our URX sessions to help build your skill set, things like that. That's really important to put on your resume as well. Awesome. Any other questions? We have 5 minutes left. I do want to say on my end, you know, it has been a weird summer. It has been a tough summer for a lot, but keep your head up, please. Mental health is super important, especially through this time. All of us have been working from home for a long time. Cynthia and I since March. I have not seen Cynthia for a while in person. And it is just a weird time to navigate through. So please keep your head up. Watch out for your mental health. That is important above all. If you're struggling, please ask for help. You know, there's a lot of recruiters and a lot of people in the early town space that really care about all of you. And we're trying our best to get, you know, headcount and push for more jobs. So be on the lookout for that and don't give up. Things will get better, and turn to people if you guys have any questions or need help with anything. Please ask for help if you do need some help. 2 more questions. What advice do you have around preparing for system design interviews? That would be for one of you, not for me.
I have not interviewed in 2.5 years.
Anyone?
I think one thing they can do is just get exposure to as many system design questions as you can. I found a really cool resource that has a bunch of interview questions that's listed on GitHub. I'll try to find that right now and post it in the chat. But you kind of just want to prep as much as you can for these different variety of questions with your friends or your mentor or your coworkers, if you have the chance to, and get feedback, actionable feedback right before you go into an interview. Like, don't just read them and be like, okay, cool, like this is how you solve these problems. Go try to solve these problems by yourself, see where you're tripping up, write those things down, and try to improve on that.
And from Avina, how do you make decisions regarding new tasks, like which technologies to integrate, which protocols or frameworks to use when you haven't worked within that area before?
For that, I think, you know, it's really important to do your research. Like, you need to understand, like, you know, what you're building, why you're building it, and how it's going to like play a role in the future, and what other components that it may or may not like kind of like be integrated with. And also research the, you know, frameworks or like, you know, whatever like technologies that you might be using and what might be a good fit there. In the past, you know, I've only had like a couple of cases where like I had to like decide for myself like what I would be using, because most of the other times, like during my internships and stuff, I was told like a certain kind of like framework, so I was told to be using that framework, told to use that framework. So it wasn't like something that I really had to bother about too much. But yeah, there have been cases where like when I have done that, and it's just like important to do your research, you know, like have a really good like comprehensive understanding of what's going on rather than making arbitrary decisions and kind of like finding the easy way out. Like, for example, like, you know, if you want to like do web dev using Python, like some people use Flask, some people use Django. You know, Flask is like clearly like the easier way out, but you know, there are certain things that that Django can do that Flask can't do. So it's important to like, and you need to know like if you need those features for your application. If you don't, then maybe Flask is a better option. But if you do, like obviously like Django is probably the better option. So yeah, it's just important to like scope all those things out and do your research before you can like start with the project. Once again, this goes into like design and like understanding like what's needed for the task at hand.
We can do a 2-in-1 question because we're running out of time. How do you answer what are your skills and experience for new grads as they don't have much experience to share? And then centering around a person that only has mobile development internships, but that pigeonholes them into that specific area. How can they expand outside of that? So Cynthia, I know you've done a lot of interviews for me in the past, so if you want to answer any of those questions.
I was actually thinking about this in terms of my own experience. And I actually think it's easier to go into something different the earlier you are in your career. So I would personally pull from, you know, classwork, you know, your internship experience may be in a certain area, especially, you don't have that many internships, but kind of pulling from classwork. And this is where you can, in an interview or in a phone call with a recruiter, that's where you can say, I'm really passionate about XYZ. Doing side projects, I think is always a good way to showcase that you have an interest in something that you may not necessarily have had the opportunity to have work experience in. And yeah, I would definitely just really pull from what you've done in your education. So, if you haven't had a lot of internships, again, projects, classwork, organizations, anything just really helps.
We are at time. I want to thank Amy, Cynthia, Sushant, and Charville for joining us today. Datadog, Databricks, Cloudera, and Nextdoor. Thank you all so much. Again, please keep your head up. Everything will get better. Connect with us if you guys can. Han Lu, you are our resume winner. You'll be meeting with the program manager from Visa to be going over your resume and asking any questions that you may have. And I will be sending out a survey and collecting your information if you want to share it with any of the recruiters that are represented here today. Again, we are opening up some positions soon, so please be on the lookout for that on any of our career websites. Thank you again so much, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your week. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Take care, guys. Thank you so much for having us.